They're not interested in serving humanity. They're interested in controlling humanity.
Who's at the center and the core?
This global cult, the ultimate goal is the fusion of the human brain with artificial intelligence.
Do you think the biggest financial crash in history has come?
We're looking at a great reset, but it's unfolding by the hour.
Can we do anything about that, though?
Yes. First of all, they're controlling you and they're controlling your family. Politics is basically a religion. It's there to play out this cult agenda for global dystopia.
How have you still got a voice?
Do you not understand what you're talking about? Clearly you don't, is actually the control system.
So
it's over.
David, who controls the world's money?
Well, who controls the world? Let's look at it from a much bigger picture. Money is fundamental to what we call freedom in the system that's been created. Because what is freedom? Freedom is choice. The more choices you have, the freer you are. And the fewer choices you have, the less free you are. And in the system that's been created as a control system, money, it's dictating who has choice and who doesn't. So if you say to people, what would you like to do with your life? Really like to do. And they'll tell you, and you'll say, well, why aren't you doing it then? And they'll say, I haven't got the money. So money is control of money, who has it and who doesn't, and that's getting insane now, is dictating choice, which is dictating freedom. So who controls the money system? Well, back in the early 90s, I started putting this together. And it's what I call today, and have done for a long time, the global cult. And that is a network of secret societies. If you can visualize the earth and a spider's web around it, with a spider at the center, and each of the strands is either a secret society, a semi-secret group, which we know exists. Well, do any research, you know it exists, but you don't know what it does in detail, or further out from the spider in the world of the scene and everyday life, the strands become governments, government agencies, banking systems, and so on. But if you go deep enough, all these organizations are ultimately controlled by the same force, either directly through the people involved or by the circumstances created in the world, which the response is the response that this cult wants you to have. So, for instance, if you take 9/11, if you want to invade countries in the Middle East, then create 9/11, blame it on hijackers from the countries in the Middle East, and in this first case, Afghanistan, and there you've got your opportunity to invade the countries you want to invade. And you've got a military which does what its superiors tell it, and the superiors do what their political masters tell it. Political masters do what the inner core of this cult tells them. And so the military just go out because they're told to, and they fight your wars for you. But in the end, it comes back to this inner core of this cult that's driving the direction of human society. And one of its most effective vehicles is the financial system. So if you look at this global web of secret societies and so on, the spider is the inner core from which it's all coming. This is where the plan for global dystopia is coming from. And out from that spider comes the step-by-step plan for global dystopia. First of all, it comes out through the secret societies, which themselves are fiercely compartmentalized. So most people in the secret society doesn't know what the secret society is really doing. And then you come out through the secret societies and you hit this point in the web that I call the cusp, where you have your organizations like the World Economic Forum, the Bilderberg Group, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the UN to a large extent, the Club of Rome that was created in 1968 to use the environment and environmental concerns as an excuse to create centralization of power. The job of the cusp organizations, which include the think tanks and non-governmental organizations, is to take the plan from the spider through the secret societies and to play it out into mainstream society. And at that point, you are into the organizations that we see and we know about: governments, government agencies, banking systems, corporations, World Health Organization, Silicon Valley, World Trade Organization, and so on. And all these organizations and secret societies and think tanks and all of it, they are fiercely compartmentalized, like I say, so that most people in them don't know what the inner circle knows. And if you go deep enough into the World Health Organization, deep enough into Silicon Valley, deep enough into Big Pharma, deep enough into the regulatory agencies that's supposed to protect us from Big Pharma, you'll hit a point where you hit this web. And at that point, all these organizations that appear to have different roles are actually on the same team, playing out the same agenda. So when the World Health Organization announced what it was and how the governments of the world need to react, Silicon Valley starts instantly deleting and censoring those that were putting out a different story to the one coming from the World Health Organization. And if you didn't understand how this web works, you'd say, well, what the hell? You're supposed to be the town square. You're just what should be happening now. It's the exchange of information, but they were censoring it. Because if you go deep enough into Silicon Valley, into Facebook and Meta, they call it now, into Google, into YouTube, etc., all of which canceled me when it hit and I called it out in 2020, you're hitting the web that the World Health Organization is also attached to. So you've got one section of the web censoring on behalf of another part of the web. And you had big pharma corporations like Pfizer and Moderna. They were going to the regulatory agencies in government, like the Centers for Disease Control in America and the Food and Drug Administration, the MHRA in Britain, and they're like around the world. And they were saying, we want to use our fake vaccine, because it was not by previous criteria, on younger and younger and younger people down to eventually babies. And at each point, the regulatory agencies were saying yes. And you were going, hold on a minute. On the basis of whether it's safe and effective, you have no idea, but you're giving them permission one after the other all over the world. What's going on? Well, what's going on is you go deep enough in the regulatory agencies and deep enough into big pharma, you're hitting the web, and the web is giving permission to the web to roll out an agenda of the web, which was the fake. And so suddenly mysteries start to disappear, in the sense that why did they do that? Why would they do that? What are they doing that for? And I have a phrase, know the outcome and you'll see the journey. If you don't know the planned outcome, then everything seems random, bewildering. What's going on? Why are they doing that? Why are they doing that? But if you know what the outcome is planned to be, then suddenly the bewildering becomes very clear steps to the outcome. And the outcome is a global, digital, artificial intelligence controlled dystopia, the like of which and the extreme of which most people couldn't comprehend because they've never experienced anything like it. But it's unfolding by the hour now, faster and faster and faster, because this global cult has been leading us there step by step by step by step by step. And the ultimate goal is the fusion of the human brain, human body with artificial intelligence. So the human brain is controlled by artificial intelligence. What we think is dictated by AI, and our emotional reactions are dictated by AI. And that's the ultimate control, if you think about it. And like I say, money is a massive central system of control, and it controls freedom by controlling choice. And so you have this global cult, which goes back a very, very long time, that created the financial system that we experience today, and we're in the process of going into an even more dystopian one using digital currencies. But up to this point, they've created this system in which you lend people money that doesn't exist, called credit, and you charge them interest on it. Now, there's many things that come from that. First of all, through fractional reserve lending, and as they call it, the banks and financial institutions are able to lend far more than they have on deposit. Through fractional reserve lending, they only have to have a certain amount in reserve to lend vastly more. And that's called credit. And so they lend you credit, which has never, does not, and will never exist. And if you don't pay it back, plus interest, then they get from wealth that they've conjured out of nowhere, they get in return, if you can't pay it back, wealth that does exist. Your home, your business, your land, your possessions, your car, whatever. And this exchange of non-existent fresh air credit for the wealth of the world is how we've got to the point now where a handful of billionaires basically control a vast segment of human wealth. I mean, some years ago now, a handful of billionaires owned more wealth than half the world's poorest population, the poorest half of the world's population. What the hell must it be now? And so what you're doing is you are absorbing and accumulating choice. And as you accumulate it and absorb it, you're taking it from the population. And so they become slaves to you because they're trying to get by and put food on the table when the money is simply not in circulation for vast tracts of them to do so. But there's another aspect to this, which is how it comes about. When you go to a bank and you borrow, say, £100,000, they type into your account £100,000, which does not, and will never exist, called credit. But you're not paying back £100,000. You're paying back £100,000 plus interest. The interest isn't created, which means this: at no point is there enough money, credit, in circulation to pay back all the debt and all the interest on the debt. There's simply not enough money in circulation to do that. And so when you've got a boom and an expansion of the economy, that can be hidden a bit, not for everybody. But when you have any form of contraction of the economy, it becomes painfully obvious there's not enough money to pay back all the debt and all the interest on the debt, which means that encoded in the system by design is people losing their homes, their businesses, their land, their resources, their livelihoods. And this system has been running, for centuries now. The Rothschilds were massively influential in creating it. And now we're on the way to creating a digital money and digital currencies, which will take this system of control through money onto a whole new level that we've never seen before.
So I want to come to digital currencies later. You've talked about this sort of inner circle cult, and you just mentioned there the Rothschilds. So who is controlling these peripheral things we see that we think are controlling the money, like the banks and the governments? Who's at the center and the core?
Well, what is the spider? It's not even in this dimension, mate. We're talking other dimensional entities that are ultimately controlling this. And
could you explain that?
Well, I will. But the global cult is the vehicle through which they impose their will upon human society. You know, when I first started uncovering this in the early 1990s, and I was uncovering the cult and the major players in the cult that we see, the real inner core players you don't see, they don't put themselves on public display. I started to realize there was a common theme among so many of them. And that's that they were involved in satanic rituals and pedophilia. And you go, what? Why? And then you look back into the ancient world and you see that the same was going on, only it was acceptable then, so it went on in the open. And people don't realize, you talk about the Greek pantheon of gods like Zeus and so on. But actually, all over the world, in every era and every culture, the people worshipped pantheons of gods. They called them different names, but they were pantheons of gods. And, after, I'm in my 36th year of research now, long ago you realize that actually they're different names for the same entities, and they are actually worshipping these other dimensional, as they perceive them, gods, not really, a bunch of prats, manipulators. And they're manipulating the human society that we see from those levels of awareness dimensions that we don't see. And, one of the things I've been saying over the years is that every child should be told at the first moment they can grasp it that when we look through our eyes, we are not seeing everything in the space that we're looking at. What we're seeing is a tiny band of frequency called visible light. Everything else that's happening in that space on other levels of frequency dimensions, we can't see. And to put that into perspective, according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our experienced reality, is 0.005% of what exists in terms of energy in the universe. Some say it's as high as 0.5, doesn't matter, it's tiny. Visible light, which is the only band of frequency we can see, is a fraction, a smear of the 0.005%. And so when people say, well, if these entities are manipulating us, why can't we see them? Well, because you can hardly see anything, mate. It's happening outside of your visual range, which is ridiculously narrow, and I don't think by accident either. And so these people are over, and the inner core of the global cult absolutely are Satanists because they are doing their rituals to these gods. And you look at the ancient world, and they were doing human sacrifice rituals as an offering to the gods. Well, I can tell you, staggering as it may seem to most people, they're still doing it. The difference is they were doing it in the open once, they're doing it in secret now, and they're the same gods, manipulators. And this cult, although because of compartmentalization, vast majority of people, even in the secret societies, won't know this. They are doing the bidding of this other dimensional force. Now, when I looked at this and I came to these conclusions, I thought, well, it ain't just started. This must have been happening for a very long time. Surely the ancients must have talked about it. And then you start doing the research, which is why it takes so long to put this together, because there's so many things to research and to go deep into. And you find that all over the world, I've talked to them, are the ancient legends and the stories communicated through the shamans, etc., and the legends and accounts, the ancient accounts, who talk about this very phenomenon of a non-human force that is manipulating human society from the hidden. So then you say, well, okay, these are the ancient legends and accounts passed through the generations from ancient societies. What about religions? What do they talk about? And you see an enormous common theme that connects the religious beliefs, not that they realize that they can put it together with necessarily current events, but the religious beliefs and the, shall we say, the cultural beliefs around the world. And so you have Christianity that talks about a negative force they call Satan, the devil, and the demonic horde that serve the satanic force. You look at Islam, and they talk about Shaitan or Iblis, which is their version of Satan and the devil, and they talk about the jinn. And I remember I started to research the Gnostic belief system, where they talk about a negative force, which I say is a consciousness, they call Yelda Baoth, or the demiurge, and that is served by what they call archons, which is Greek for rulers. And you see the common themes all over the world. I talked to a fantastic man in South Africa, a Zulu high shaman, died in his 90s, called Credo Mutwa, who told me the same stories from the Zulu perspective. And so I'm in a taxi going from New York airport to the city, and there's a Muslim taxi driver driving me, and he said, "Oh, what are you doing these days? What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm researching Gnostic writings which were found at Nag Hammadi in Egypt in 1945 in an earthen jar, which were kind of revelatory about all this." But I said, I'm researching the archons and the Gnostic belief systems, and blah blah blah. And he said, "Well, what are the archons then?" And I started talking about them, and he said, "Well, that sounds just like the jinn." Exactly, because it's a different name for the same force. So what you've got is this global cult is playing out within the frequency band of human society the will of this non-human force operating outside of human sight. And this has been going on for literally thousands of years. And step by step by step, the dystopia has got more and more global. Once upon a time, we had people organizing in tribes. Then we had the next stage where lots of tribes came together to form a nation. Now a few people at the center of the nation are dictating to all the former tribes. Now you've got the European Union and all these trading groups that dictate from a central point. The whole of the European Union is basically dictated out of Brussels and the unelected bureaucrats. And so we've seen this process through this period I'm talking about of centralization of power. And that's not an accident, it's by design. And so what we're heading towards, if we don't wake up fast, as I've been talking about since the early 1990s, is a world government, a world central bank, that the European Central Bank is a stepping stone to that, a world currency, which would not be cash, but digital. I first said in a book called The Robots' Rebellion in 1993 that the plan was to have an end to cash and an electronic currency. Look at it. It seemed crazy then. Crazy. Cash is everywhere. Not anymore. And so we've seen this progression to more and more centralization of power. And it's a very simple equation. The more you centralize power, the fewer are dictating to more and more and more people. The more diversity of decision-making you have, the less chance any central group can dictate to everyone. But the more you centralize power, the more that becomes more and more possible. And that's where we are now. And so the world financial system is designed to become, to a very large extent, it already is, but to become a fully fledged digital global financial system with money that can be programmed, digital money can be programmed, to dictate what you can buy and if you can buy and where you can buy, whether you are confined to use your money in a small area or a larger one. All this becomes possible with digital money. And you see, all you've got to do, it's like, it really is true that when you know the outcome, you see the journey. Once you know the outcome that's planned, everything starts to fall into place. And you see why things are happening day after day after day after day. So we have countries all over the world moving to digital money. European Union is pushing it for later this year, I think. Russia, supposed to be out of the system, not the same as the West, still pushing digital money, the digital ruble. And in America, because Trump has to keep his base happy, which understands the consequences of what they call central bank digital currencies, he's done a executive order saying America can't have a central bank digital currency, but they're bringing in stable coins, digital stable coins that can be programmed in the same way as a central bank digital currency. So it's a scam. Everywhere you look is moving in the same direction. Now, who's coordinating that? Who's making that happen? Who coordinated the response to? It's this web which operates from the center and dictates a plan for the world. And of course, there'll be some places that won't go with it immediately or won't go with it as fast. But in the end, the centrally dictated plan for human society goes on unfolding as we speak.
There's a few things I want to ask you, which to me seem economically common sense, but maybe you've got a different response. So, for example, you said money's being loaned out of thin air. I get that it's being digitally created, but if there is no interest, there is no penalty for not paying it back. And interest keeps you interested to pay a loan back. So I would say that interest is needed to pay a loan back. And of course, if you get a loan to start a business or if you get a loan to buy a house, you can actually create your own wealth. So there's upsides to that. So that's, and then the second thing I want to add to this is inflation. Because I've thought for a long time, inflation is essentially kind of like a hidden tax. And it's just a way to reduce the value of your money and control you. But at the same time, if there's zero inflation, you don't have a reason to spend the money. So it becomes like cryptocurrency is deflationary. So people hold something that's deflationary, it goes up. So it can't be a currency. So you need a form of inflation, albeit small, to create movement in a currency and economy.
Explain to me why interest is an incentive to pay back a loan.
Well, it's not an incentive, it's a penalty for not paying it back, which is different.
No,
but otherwise it's a gift.
No, it's not. Of course, it's not a gift.
Well, otherwise, it's if I borrow 100 grand off you, but it's just 100 grand, and I've got no penalty for not paying it back.
No, we're talking about the banks, and there are penalties for not paying back a non-interest loan, and the situation would be that you would, in the same way, you're signing over your what you own in response to the loan. It doesn't matter if it's £100,000 or £100,000 plus interest. There are penalties if you don't pay it back. So the interest is actually, I would say, utterly bloody irrelevant. And let me ask you this. Why are governments borrowing money at interest from the world financial system when they're the fricking government? Why aren't they creating their own money interest-free and circulating it to the population interest-free? Why isn't that happening?
I don't know.
I'll tell you why. Because the same cult that controls the banking system controls the governments that make the laws regarding the banking system. It's simple as that. You know, we've really got to get our heads around the fact that the whole financial system is there for a means of control. and come up with something a little bit more sensible that doesn't have all the aces held by the banks, but actually treats money as what it should be, which is a means of exchange that overcomes the limitations of barter. Once you're having interest on money, you're making money from money, and this is how the banking system comes about. The Rothschilds and these other banking families, enormous numbers out of Germany originally, indeed out of Italy and further back, even as Babylon, they're not interested in serving humanity. They're interested in controlling humanity. And if you have governments up to their neck in debt to the same banking system that the population are, then you have control of the whole frickin' system through money. We have people in this country, and every other bloody country come to that, who are living in deprivation and poverty, because not overwhelmingly because they don't want to work, and don't want to contribute to society, but because the money is not there to give them a living. And the more AI comes in, the more blatant and massive this is going to be, all part of the control system. And the reason they don't have the means to put food on the table and live a decent life is because the money's not available. And the money is controlled, who has it and who doesn't, by the banking system. And there's no way that a banking system centrally controlled through organizations like the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, should have control of the world's ability to feed itself and to live a decent life, because they are deciding how much money is in circulation and how much isn't. The whole thing is built to control.
Right now, your personal data is being sold and exploited, and probably without you knowing. Every day, countless companies are invading your personal privacy by buying and selling your data for their profits. But the good news is there's a way to opt out of this, and this is why I'm excited to partner with Incogni. Because what Incogni do is they work, hustle, and force on your behalf in the background to remove all of your personal data from all of these intrusive databases, marketing lists, and companies. So to stop the spam and protect your privacy, go right now to incogni.com/disruptors to get an exclusive 60% discount off an Incogni plan. That's incogni.com/disruptors, or click the link in the description. So as an individual, what can one do initially financially to maybe get ahead or at least survive? And then broadly speaking, for humanity to have some decentralization or some fairness in humanity?
Well, they first of all, cash must stay in circulation, because it's disappearing at a fantastic rate. And once it's gone, so's freedom.
Can we do anything about that, though?
We can keep using cash for a start, but the point being that unless we start to understand that this global cult exists, that it's driving the direction of human society, and we need to dismantle it, then nothing's going to change. Because the power at the center of this cult globally now is such that if that's not dismantled, it's over. Simple as that. And what you find, because of this compartmentalization, is the vast majority, and I'm talking the vast majority even at cabinet level in government, have no idea how the system works. They're just a pawn in it. They're a cog in it for a brief time, but they don't know how it works. And they're parroting the platitudes and the cliches about, oh, yes, economics, inflation, money supply, and all this stuff. Do you not understand what you're talking about? Clearly you don't. Is actually the control system that's not just controlling the population. They're controlling you, and they're controlling your family, and they're controlling your kids and your grandkids. And if we don't start opening our minds to beyond the platitudes and the cliches of response, and see that it is a system designed by the few to control the population for the few, then nothing's going to change. And one of the things is that we've got to start realizing that politics is not there to make a difference for the better. It's there to play out this cult agenda for global dystopia. There's 8 billion people, so we're told, in the world. The number of people in full knowledge who are driving this is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of that 8 billion. Mathematically, there is no way that those few should be controlling 8 billion people and the direction of the world of those 8 billion people. It is. Why? Because people allow themselves to be programmed in the way they see the world, and the education system is massively part of this, and the media system. So they unquestioningly basically follow what the system wants them to do. And those the great number of people that don't want to follow it are frightened of not following it because they're frightened of the consequences of what will happen if they don't do as they're bloody told. There's a wonderful example of that, which is happening now or just happened, whereby the government in Britain has prescribed as a terrorist group an organization called Palestine Action, which has not killed anybody. And so because it's prescribed, anyone that says they support it is arrested. So lots of people congregate in London with banners saying we support Palestine Action. Hundreds and hundreds of them are arrested by these pawns of the system called police. And the point is that I'm looking at the reaction on the internet of people of the right who overwhelmingly support Israel and what's happening in Palestine. And they're cheering on the arrests of these people who are protesting genocide in Gaza. A little while back, when the Labour government of Starmer first came in, we had an horrific incident in Southport, in the northwest of England, where some children were killed in a dance school. And people were posting in their anger and fury things on the internet relating to migrants and stuff. And the sentences they were given were outrageous, ludicrous for posting an opinion on the internet. The right at that time was rightly furious at the sentences. They said, this is fascism. Well, who do you think, people of the right, was the force that were arresting the people in London protesting against the Gaza genocide. Who do you think the force was that was doing that you were cheering? Oh, I don't know. It was the same force that you were condemning for jailing people for ludicrous sentences as a result of internet posts. It was the most blatant example of divide and rule. And we need to, therefore, appreciate that this global cult has you on the right and you on the left in its gun sights, but it's playing you off against each other through divide and rule, so that you're so busy fighting each other that you can't see that the strings attached to the people you're condemning are the same hands, held by the same hands that are holding the strings attached to you. And it's this awareness of the fact that we are all, whatever our belief system, whatever our religion, whatever our income bracket, we're all in the gun sights of this same force, which is pushing us towards a global dystopia on a scale that is unimaginable through artificial intelligence and the fusion of the human brain with artificial intelligence. And if that realization doesn't happen, it's over. And, you know, this is why I'm so vehement in what I'm saying, is because I have grandkids and I have kids and I have a great-grandchild now. And I know the bloody world that they're going to live in unless people get their asses in gear, stop fighting among themselves and start realizing we should all focus on a common threat. And of course, belief systems that are not to be questioned are the creations of this cult. Because if expanding your mind to see the scale of what's happening is the answer and the response that comes from that, if that's the answer and this cult doesn't want you to have the answer, then it wants you in some form of myopia beyond which you won't go. So they get some of you to identify belief system with the political right. The deep state are the Democrats. And they get the left to self-identify with their belief system beyond which they won't go. And then they play the belief systems off against each other. Politics is basically a religion. So look at religions. If you're a Christian, then, and you are unquestioningly a Christian, then there's areas of research where you will not go because it will breach your Christianity belief system. If you're a Muslim, there's vast areas that you will not go because it will breach your Muslim belief system. Same if you're a Hindu or whatever. Same if you're of the political right or the political left. And what does that mean? It means people are self-limiting their sense of the possible so that they don't see, shit, it's targeting all of us. Yes, left, right, Christian, Jew, Muslim, Hindu. But because of this belief system prison that people live in and are manipulated to live in, I understand why they do. People don't see the picture where the answers lie. And the reason I'm so vehement about it now is because the walls are closing in faster and faster and faster. Okay, so when AI is connected to the human brain, is AI controlled by this force going to manifest the question, who am I? Where am I? What is this place? How's this control system work? No. You're just going to become basically a computer terminal on someone else's internet. And we are looking this in the face. Look at what's happening on the internet. Look at Elon Musk and what's going on X. This Grok AI through his XAI operation that's being pounded and pounded and pounded out. Oh, look what Grok can do. Oh, you can make these pictures. You can make a single picture move, and oh, it's great. It's all drawing you in to the AI dystopia. And others are doing it as well in all the other areas of Silicon Valley and artificial intelligence. Now, here's the point. What we're seeing, and this is a wonderful way that people are scammed. It's like, first of all, America is saying, we must win the AI race. We must stop China winning the AI race. We must win it. And that's what others are saying, like the European Union and in UK. So they've turned it into a contest which we must win. Now that is all part of drawing you in to accept more and more AI because we must win the race. But then you look at Silicon Valley and you look at Elon Musk, who's pushing this Grok AI. And then you've got ChatGPT with OpenAI. You've got the Chinese AI systems. You've got these other AI systems that are coming out of Silicon Valley and Israel and elsewhere. And when you look at it, you see competition. Oh, is Grok better than ChatGPT? Oh, yeah, well, OpenAI is coming out with this. Oh, what will Musk do? Once you realize Musk, Sam Altman at ChatGPT, Larry Ellison at Oracle, the Chinese AI people, all of them answer to the same call. And the competition is an illusion. What it's there for is to draw you in to reach the goal of the cult, which is the fusion between humanity and artificial intelligence.
You mentioned Elon Musk. It seemed at one point everyone was championing him as a freedom speech fighter.
Yeah, present company accepted, by the way.
Yeah. Do you think Elon Musk is net good for humanity?
Well, of course not.
Why not?
He's a front man for the cult, just like these other people that are driving the AI agenda. What happened with... see, the thing about this cult is it doesn't make it up as it goes along. Okay, it will react to certain things it might not have been expecting, but it's following a plan. You know, people have said to me, how did you know what was coming all those years ago? Well, it weren't sitting in a darkened room, pulling it out the ether. It was hard research uncovering what the plan was. And it's very simple. If there's a plan for the world and you start to uncover it and nothing intervenes to stop it, then by predicting where the plan wants to go, you are predicting the future. You're not predicting the future that has to happen. You're predicting the future if nothing intervenes to stop it happening. And unfortunately, ridiculously little has, which is why it's turned out to be so accurate. My wish was to head it off so it didn't happen. So they play the long game, is what I'm saying. So when Elon Musk came out, or years ago now, and positioned himself as an AI skeptic, I laughed because it was obvious he wasn't. But it's very good for pulling in those who are skeptical. So the funny thing was that even though he positioned himself as an AI skeptic, he's basically gone on, and it's getting faster and faster and faster, rolling out more and more AI of which he's supposed to be skeptical. And then came the crucial point when he said, basically, I am skeptical of AI and it could be the end of humanity. That was one of his lines, as we know it, certainly. But he said, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Now, inevitability is a massively influential mind control technique, because when you're trying to stop something, you're working to stop it. When you are convinced that something is inevitable, well, now you are trying to mitigate the effects rather than stop it, which you think is not possible. And so it's a completely different way that you are addressing the situation. But what had to happen, because, I remember the alternative media. There wasn't an alternative media when I started out. It didn't exist. But there wasn't a period of the alternative media pre-Musk and Twitter X where people were calling him out as a transhumanist. He's one of these people that wants to fuse humanity with artificial intelligence. He's a danger. So they had to somehow get around that and get him on board, or get the alternative media on board with him. And so he was allowed to buy Twitter, now X. And I say allowed because I know from my own experience, and of all the other platforms come to that Twitter was seriously censoring any alternative information worth the name. And I got thrown off it, etc. And then after Musk bought it, he put out these things called the Twitter files, just a few of them anyway, to say and show, yes, Twitter before me was controlled by the deep state. Right, okay. So what you're saying then is that the deep state controlled Twitter. Yeah. And what appeared on it. Yeah. And that's exactly what they wanted the situation to be, right? Oh, yeah. So why did they sell it to you then? Why did they sell it to a self-proclaimed, and it is self-proclaimed, free speech absolutist? Why would they do that? Well, I knew it was a scam from the moment it happened because I'd been tracking Elon Musk and his companies and how he was ticking all the boxes of the cult agenda for a long time before. And it didn't take long to see the nature of the scam, because suddenly the alternative media that was calling him out, at least in part as a transhumanist and an AI control freak, was giving him a free ride. Now he's one of us. He's one of us. He's let us back. We can say this, we can say that. Except that when he appointed a CEO who was a stalwart of the World Economic Forum called Linda Yaccarino, she just left, she announced that if you say something that is lawful but awful, you'll find it very difficult to find on Twitter, X. And that's what we know as shadow banning. And the people in the alternative media who are selling the agenda, they're not shadow banned, they're algorithmically supported. Those that are pushing back are shadow banned. All the major people that I have respect for in the alternative media are shadow banned. And suddenly, once he got this this support, this eulogy, I mean, it was pathetic to watch. People who were pushing back on the conspiracy and the agenda before, who were suddenly in awe of this man, Musk. If only they knew the background. You're not going to bother to find out then. And then he started pushing AI like never before. And he's just said very recently words to the effect of, I was a skeptic, but I'm now going for it. Right? Well, you were always going to go for it, weren't you? And now he's pushing AI like crazy on X, which has become a propaganda arm for the AI agenda. You know, this is the thing I say to people. Just because something appears to be like it is in this moment doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. And Twitter X was always going to be transformed into two things. One, a propaganda arm for this cult agenda, the major part of the agenda being the AI human fusion, and also as a diverter of attention away from that agenda, which is what you see all the time with the dramas and the stuff that goes on Twitter X. And while that's happening with Musk, he's also putting up low orbit satellites, thousands and thousands of them. He's got permission for tens of thousands of them. Low orbit satellites beaming electromagnetic frequencies, fields, technologically generated, obviously, at the Earth. Another guy who's coming on behind doing the same is Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And they're creating something that I predicted way back, and that is a technologically generated electromagnetic field that would cover the entire planet. And you can do that with 5G towers, 4G towers, 6G towers coming online soon in the towns and cities, okay. But if you're going to cover everywhere, you've got to do it from space. And that's what they're doing. Because, you know, television frequencies, information, where you turn the set on and there's the picture in front of you. That information is generated electromagnetically, in electromagnetic waves. And in a book I've just finished, I look at what's happening in China, and has been happening actually for decades already, whereby they are using electromagnetic fields to interact with the brain and manipulate the way people think, basically into docility, but other ways as well. So if you create a global electromagnetic field, you have created the vehicle, the medium for waves of information that can be picked up by the human brain. And like I say, in China, they're doing it now through an electromagnetic field direct connection. But imagine what would the connection would be if you had receiver systems in the brain and the body that was picking up these frequencies being played out through this global, eventually, electromagnetic field. They're playing out a cult agenda for the centralized control of human thought and emotional response. That's where we're heading, and we're heading to it day by day by day, and it's getting faster and faster and faster. You know, one of the things I've been pointing out over the years is that, again, when you take a breath and you take a step back and you look at it from a wider perspective, you realize that, for instance, the speed at which this technological AI world is playing out is getting faster and faster and faster. And you realize something else, that for a long time now, there has not been a gap where they've been sitting around a table strumming their fingers, waiting for the next thing to be discovered. It's like one thing follows another. And because they're following, one's following another in terms of advancement, faster and faster and faster, the whole control system's moving faster and faster and faster. Well, what I've been pointing out over the years is that the control system already exists. It's in the underground bases and the secret projects. But what they have to do is play it out as if somehow it's a natural, organic thing. You know, if you were running or you were living in the non-computerized world, and suddenly they say, here's the full-blown computer control system, there you go, people will go, what are you bloody talking about? We're not having that. So you bring it in step by step, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. First of all, you bring in things that you hold, holdables, smartphones. Then you go to the next stage, which is wearables, on the skin. You want to get in the skin, but you want to get in the body, but you're doing it step by step. And then you start going in the body. And you, first of all, sell the concept of going in the body through people like Elon Musk with Neuralink, or where you cut a bit of the skull away and put this thing in and all that stuff. And you know, I remember Elon Musk being asked a question, a very good question. Yeah, but how many people are going to want a bit of their skull taken away? Do you all want their microchips in? And then he said, and this is, I think it's before vaccine. He said, oh, but you might not have to do it that way. He said, you could go in through the veins to get into the brain. Nanotechnology. So you've gone from holdables to wearables to this concept of connectables in the body to nanotechnology. But the nanotechnology, of course, has had to be done surreptitiously so that people don't know it's happening till it's too late. And so we are at a point now where we are looking extreme dystopia in the face through the monetary system, the digital currency, and most of all, through the AI-human fusion. Because, you know, when Kurzweil said by 2030, people will start to be connected to artificial intelligence, people get, and I understand it, people get the idea, the vision of somehow artificial intelligence being connected to the brain and all that stuff. But it's nanotechnology, that's how it's being done. It's not some kit that's going to be connected to your head. It's through this system of receivers and picking up these electromagnetic waves of the hive mind. And when you look today, and for a long time past, the ability of people to act like they have a hive mind in the sense of people thinking the same and acting the same, then just imagine the scale of the hive mind if it was done technologically in the way I'm describing. So maybe people can understand why I don't mess about when I'm trying to get this across, because it's not a case of, oh yeah, we must go softly. We can't. This is not 1950. It's not 1960, 70, 80, 90. This is 2025. We are years away from this thing coming in. And if we don't understand it now, well, it's going to be too late.
So again, I want to come to possible solutions. Do you think the biggest financial crash in history is coming?
Well, they have to create a situation where the current financial status quo ceases to be. And this is something that I've written about over the years at length. You might call it creative destruction. You have a status quo, and you've created the status quo, but it's a stepping stone to the one that you really want eventually. So while that status quo that you may have created is in place, it's going to stop any replacement coming in. So you've got to destroy the status quo. Now, wars are wonderful for that. If you look at the world before the First World War, 1914, and you look at it afterwards, completely different, because the status quo had been dismantled by the war. Then, if not long later, we have the Second World War, and it's massively dismantled, and that's when the centralization of global power really started to move, with the Bretton Woods Agreement and the IMF and the World Bank and all the rest of it. And so we've come to the point, and I find it very interesting that Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, should talk about the Great Reset, because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a Great Reset, and the Great Reset is the end of the current status quo on every frickin' level, including financial. The end of cash, all of it. Everything that we've kind of known in the lifetimes of people alive today is planned to go in this Great Reset. So, what better way of destroying the financial status quo than a massive global crash? And I think that's highly possible and highly probable that that's coming as part of this. Because once the status quo is gone, then the people who have covertly crashed it will come forward as the saviors to present a new system to save us from the crash of the old. Not only would a crash bring an end to so many people's livelihoods and employment, more than anything, AI is doing it. And, I don't think people realize the scale of jobs that is going to be replaced by AI, and not in the far distant future either, much sooner. I mean, we're now having court judgments made by AI in places like parts of America. And these trials are not trials, they're a foot in the door. We're having the whole of the financial system is being redrawn with AI. So even the legal system is being redrawn. People, Trump's talking about, we want to bring jobs back to America, but you won't bring jobs back to America. Even if you bring production back to America, it will overwhelmingly be artificial intelligence doing it. So you're going to have a situation, and again, on purpose, where people are going to have no way of putting the food on the table. So this is the plan, and they're already trialing it all around the world. Elon Musk is a big fan. It must be bad. Called a universal guaranteed income. The fact that you will be given a certain amount of money every month, be a pittance, and everyone will basically get the same, and you will get it so long as you don't rock the boat. If you're an agitator or you are a dissident of the system, you won't get it. And then they'll say, well, you can be a dissident if you like, but you ain't going to get the guaranteed income. And by the way, how else are you going to put food on the table? There aren't any jobs anymore. It's all done by AI.
And I guess no cash either.
No, there won't be any cash. So this is the ultimate control. So now imagine this. You are eventually connected to artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is doing your thinking and your feeling. So you're never going to have thoughts of being a dissident and challenging the system anyway, because artificial intelligence is not going to manifest that thought. You are in a situation where by this time, digital money will be in place that is programmable. So it can be programmed so it dictates what you can buy and what you can't buy, and it dictates where you can buy it or not buy it. In other words, if you move to this whole concept of 15-minute cities, where they're telling us that everything we need will be within 15 minutes walk or cycle ride from our home, then if you want to say, sod you, I'm going out beyond it, well, you can, but you won't be able to use your money because it's programmable only in the area that you live. And, you know, the reason that they're bringing in electric vehicles and using government legislation to impose it is not to save the planet. It's a frickin' myth. It's just an excuse out of the organizations like the Club of Rome in 1968, specifically used the environment as an excuse for centralization of power. It's because you can't have computer-controlled vehicles that are petrol and electrical in the same way, petrol and diesel, in the same way that if they're electrical. And the idea is, and you know, here's Musk again with his robo-taxis and these other driverless taxis they're bringing in, much better than his. But this is a point that I kind of made earlier, but I'll make it again. It's like, oh, Musk's bringing in the autonomous taxis, and they're bringing them in. And I've got a question for you. Anybody? Why do we need autonomous vehicles? Why can't we just bloody drive them? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if you have the freedom, as we still have, just to get in a car and drive it where you want, virtually where you want, then that's freedom. But when you've got autonomous vehicles only, the computer is programmed to decide where you can and cannot go. And what will be denied you is the vast, overwhelming majority of the world and the country. And that's why electric vehicles are being brought in. And who's been one of the leaders in selling electric vehicles? Oh, Elon Musk. And so you have autonomous cars that are saying where you can and cannot go. Even in the interim, if you have a petrol vehicle that can go somewhere else, these cameras that are being put up all over London, for instance, so it's everywhere too, that are number plate cameras that if you go past them and they take your number plate, if you don't pay a fee, if you've not got a certain amount of a certain type of vehicle, or if you go in the congestion charge zone and you don't pay, well, you get fined. And these number plate cameras are not just for that. They're part of this whole system that's being built around us, whereby if you go out of your zone your number plate is taken and you get a fine. Now, this is the other aspect or another aspect of digital money. At the moment, you can refuse to pay the fine and you can challenge it. But the idea of digital money is that when you cross the camera and you go out the zone, or you go somewhere you shouldn't, the fine will be taken out of your bank account immediately. So there's no challenging fines anymore. They'll just take it out of your bank account. And there'll be endless reasons for you to transgress the system that will mean more money will be taken in fines until you've got nothing. And the other thing about the universal basic income is that it will be programmed so that you have to spend it within a certain amount of time and then it gets deleted because they want to stop anyone building up any level of money that would give them choice. So what I'm describing is something that you see portrayed over the last 20 years or so, and ever more so in the movies and the TV programs. This dystopian technological AI world. Why is that? Why are there so many programs that are and movies that are, for a long, long time now, have been showing you this world? It's because they're preparing you, consciously and subconsciously, to accept it with far less resistance than if it came in and you were completely unprepared for it. So when something comes in, and what I've just described is so outrageous, it's so extreme, you would think that the reaction from people would be, you're going to do what? No, we're not having that. Come on, people, we're not having that. So they prepare you for it, and they make it, in a funny way, familiar. Subconsciously as well as consciously. They make you familiar with it. They're constantly showing you that world in the movies, and it's called preemptive programming. It's got a name. They're showing you the world they want to bring in that you would think people would go, you're joking, we're not having this. But they're preparing you for it. They're making you familiar with it so that they're mitigating the potential resistance. We are dealing with a scale of evil, a scale of utter imbalance, schismatic imbalance, that it's almost unimaginable. It's a scale of evil that has no empathy whatsoever. It cannot possibly put itself in the feelings of that it's affecting. And you imagine that. This, it's interesting. There's something called the Hare test, Hare, after the guy who developed it, called the Hare test of a psychopath. And it's a list of traits that if you have enough of them, you are considered a psychopath. And the top two traits of a psychopath are lack of empathy, deletion of empathy, and compassion, lack of compassion. So you put that together, and this force of evil, this other dimensional force of evil, they're super psychopaths. They're extreme super psychopaths. And that mentality is passed on through this global cult. So when you think that key players in this cult are involved in the sacrifice of children, they're involved in the pedophilia, abuse of children, in the murder of children, what level of lack of empathy and compassion do you need? And people have really got to get to a point where they stop seeing the world from their own perspective, where they stop saying, no, they'd never do that. No, you would never do that. They would not only do it, they'd get off on it. That's the level of evil we're dealing with. And so you look at what's happening in Gaza now. What level of evil is necessary to do that to tens of thousands of kids and seek to wipe out a whole people in Gaza while you're kicking them out of the West Bank as well? What level of evil is necessary? You know, we've got to come to terms with the level of evil that's behind all this. It's the level of evil I've been exposing for 36 years and will go on doing so. But if we don't grasp it, we go on seeing the world from the perspective of what we would do, we'll never get what we're dealing with.
So if this is all true, why have you not been taken out? How have you still got a voice? Because surely that would be the first thing that would happen.
I guess from that perspective is the intense, almost historic levels of ridicule I went through from 1990 onwards. And although there's been a dramatic turnaround of that, you still people, oh, he says it's the reptiles. Oh, funny, isn't it? How much research have you done on the reptilian angle of this? I've done 36 years. You? 36 seconds? Oh, no, not that much. No, exactly. If you want to know how easy it is to control the world, you should have been by my side in the last 36 years. It's a doddle. So that ridicule gave me a real big honeymoon period because it was almost good that I was exposing it because everyone thought I was crazy anyway, or seemed to. But now, okay, you take me out. You know, my books would go through the roof because they're all out there. Nearly 30 books I've written. Just finished another one. And it's all there. And the credibility I would have if I was taken out would be phenomenal. So, I mean, what's the point? What's the point of that? And another thing, you know, I mean, it's more deep and more esoteric, but maybe we have actually more power than we are told we have once we realize the nature of who we are. Maybe we can be, and this is a long story, and so we'll need a lot of background. But maybe these entities and this cult is not as freaking powerful as it wants us to believe. Maybe it is terrified that humanity will wake up to see what the game is, because its game is then over. Because a few people, and it is a few, cannot control the direction of the lives of 8 billion. If those, at least billions of them, are aware of what the game is and how it's played and what's behind it. So it's something you pick up over the years more and more from endless different sources, is just how terrified this force is of humanity waking up to its plight and the way the game is played, because it's over for them then. See, when you've got 8 billion people, so they tell us, and there's a handful running it, this is the whole point of the AI human fusion, until you have got control of human thought directly, which is what that's all about, then you cannot physically control people, except in a small area, if those people won't have it, right? So, example, I mean, there's, a very, very large group of people, like thousands, in London, and the police moved in and arrested hundreds of them. If those thousands said we're not having it, the police would not be able to do it, because we behave as we do because we perceive as we do. If you perceive differently, you behave differently. So you've got to control perception. This is why they control the education system and created it. This is why they own the media. This is why they've moved in on the alternative media. This is why you have this incessant and gathering censorship. It's because they want to control the information that people receive, from which they form their perceptions, which dictate their behavior. And if you keep people in the dark about what's actually going on, then they're not going to respond in a way that's going to stop what's going on, because they don't know it's going on. This is what censorship is about, and it's what control of the sources of communication are about. And so, big time, we as a human race have got to take control of our perceptions back. First of all, realizing the nature of how one force is threatening all of us, but also start to bloody question. There's two types of people that have been responsible for every tyranny in history, and they're responsible for this one. And that is those that just obey authority without question, and those who don't want to but are frightened of the consequences of not obeying authority. They are the people that have been responsible for every tyranny in history. Because fascism and communism is not brought in by fascists and communists. It's brought in by the population acquiescing to the communists and the fascists. There's never enough of them. And that leaves the third group, which is the only group that's ever ended every tyranny in history. And that is those that can see what's going on because they're bothered and had the self-respect to find out, and won't cooperate with it. We've got a choice. We either bow to unquestioning obedience, we bow to fear of not obeying, or we put down our fault lines, our irrelevant manufactured fault lines of divide and rule, and look this monster in the eye. It's single eye, and say we're not having it. And if enough people do that, the game is over. If they don't, well, all the best.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
And what are you working on right now that maybe we could, maybe a book you're writing or?
Well, I've just finished another book, which is going to come out in the first week of the new year. It takes a long time to get it into America these days. So that's why.
And that new book's called?
It's called The Roadmap.
Okay.
And it's specifically written to say, okay, you've seen this bit, you've seen that bit, but how about all these other bits that connect into that, which make that look a tiny, tiny part of what's actually going on? And the thing is that once you get the big picture, and I'm learning all the time, so where we are now, where I am now, once you get the big picture, that's where the answers lie. They don't lie in the myopia of the world of tiny band of frequency of human. The answers lie in seeing that big picture and seeing what that means in terms of how we address it. And but again, I've been doing this for 36 years. It takes a long time to uncover it. And And that's why I've been doing it full time since 1990, because you have to do that. You have to go for it in the sense of you give your life to it in uncovering it and putting the dots together. But you have to do it with a mind that's open enough to let the evidence and the information be your guide and not preconceived idea, religious belief, political belief, any of it. Because they're all blocks on seeing the biggest picture. So I wrote this book specifically to put these other dots together to show the tapestry, the picture of what we're facing. And it will explain so much about why this is happening and that's happening and that's happening and that's happening, which on the face of it don't seem to connected, but fundamentally are.
And is there a social channel or a media channel where you're not banned, where we can follow you on an ongoing basis?
Oh yeah, well, I do post on X, despite the shadow banning often. But we have we're sitting here now. We have this media platform called Iconic.com.
With a K, Iconic with a K.
Iconic with a K, yeah. And it does news shows virtually every day. Well, actually every day virtually. But also we do full-length documentaries, which I've done quite a few of them now, on the nature of reality, this other dimensional force, or all these bigger pictures of the story, and that's available at iconic.com.
David, thank you very much.
No problem, mate. Really nice to meet you. See ya.